Welcome to Elevate, the gathering spot for first responders, their families, and the communities that support them. Hello and welcome back to the Elevate podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Goodknight, and I'm with a special guest today that I met through a mutual friend. Thomas Carchidi is an ex-police officer from the New York area and has a heck of a story, has a book to talk about, and an incredible life inside of the first responder world that I just can't wait to dive into deeply today. Thomas, go ahead and tell us about yourself and where you came from and what you've done your whole life, and then we'll go from there and talk about the other stuff.
All right, cool. Well, first of all, I'd like to say, Kyle, thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it. It means a lot to me. I'm looking forward to it, and it'll be fun. So I'm Tommy, whatever you want to call me.
Yo, Tommy.
Yeah, exactly.
Do I have to put my New York accent on that I do for my voiceover work? No.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so I'm a child of two Italian immigrants that came from Italy in the 1950s. My mom and dad, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, everybody's from Calabria, Italy, southern Italy. And my mom is one of 8 children, and my father's one of 4. So a lot of cousins and extended family. I was born in Brooklyn. My parents came to America in the 50s. They came to Ellis Island on the boat. On the boat,
right.
We call it on the
American
boat.
dream, yeah.
Yeah, came over on the boat. Just a joke in our family. Yeah, that's a whole nother story. That boat ride was like horrible. They said they were down the bottom, sick as dogs, but that's another story for another day.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, bad. So yeah, I was born in Brooklyn. I'm 49 years old. I grew up I was born in Bensonhurst. A lot of Italians flocked to that area back in that day. I moved to Long Island when I was a kid, probably around 2. I moved to the Massapequa, Bethpage area. My parents wanted the Long Island life, so it was a little slower, a little safer, I guess, a little more quiet back then.
Would that be considered the burbs?
Big time, especially back then. Things have changed here now dramatically in 40 years, but
I bet.
Back then, Long Island in the 50s was all potato fields,
Wow, that's hard to imagine.
yeah, exactly. Now Nassau County's like Queens too. You can't. There's nowhere to move.
Right.
There's no property left, but yeah, so went to Plainedge High School, graduated in 93, wound up going to college, City University of New York, John Jay College for my bachelor's. My undergrad, went back to Long Island University, C.W. post for my master's, joined the police department, moved to Maryland. I was a police officer in Baltimore, Maryland. Lateral, transferred out to Montgomery County, Maryland. I was also a peace officer in New York for a long time, over 10 years. I retired from law enforcement due to some work-related injuries, service-connected injuries, and health issues. I just was related. I was diagnosed about a year and a half ago with 9/11 related stage 4 lymphoma cancer, which thank God.
Remission?
Yeah, I'm in full remission, thank God.
Fantastic. Congrats.
Yeah,
That's
so
incredible.
I'm in my 3rd year of law school. I'm studying to be an attorney. And I just wrote my book. I just published it about 2 weeks ago. It's called The Life in Law Enforcement, a Police Memoir, The Good, the Bad, the Corrupt.
Oh, that's a very interesting title. You get the good, the bad, and then you throw the corrupt in there, and it's like, ooh, that's intriguing.
Exactly. So that's basically my history.
Sure.
Anything you want to ask me from here on in,
absolutely.
Please be my guest.
Yeah, so when it comes, so let's go back to the 9/11 stuff. I assume that you were part of the cleanup crew, and that's why you were around all that stuff?
So I was actually in between law enforcement jobs at that time.
Okay.
I was waiting to go into the Baltimore City Police Academy, and I was working security for a big corporation, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then during 9/11. And when it happened, I just felt like I needed to go and help. I needed to be there. I wanted to.
We all did.
Yeah. So the
day it happened, I looked at my boss. I wasn't in healthcare at the time, but I was a respiratory therapist. And I looked at my boss. I was selling windows and doors. And I looked at my boss and I'm like, I got to go to New York. And he spun me around. He's like, listen, he goes, I need you to go home and be with your pregnant wife and your family right now. Because we don't know what's going on. Be with your family. And I was like, And that was like the best thing because, of course, fast forward a week, nobody knew where to put people. The people that flocked to New York to help out, they had no place to poop, no place to eat, no place to sleep. And it became a huge problem why we have, and why we have response teams now instead of just everybody. It was, yes, everybody wanted to help because that's all they felt they could do, especially us and, first responders that didn't have, a connection to anything. I wasn't working at a hospital at the time. So I was like, I can go. Right. And, but it was good. I mean, I always, anytime I see him, I thank him for stopping me that day because I would have been right. I would have been one of the people as it caused, the secondary problems with all the people up there. But so you were part of the cleanup efforts and you went down to help and. Yeah.
So that Thursday, I was down there a couple of days, but so I believe 9/11 was on a Tuesday. That Thursday, I went down. I was there all night, and it was just like it was crazy. There's a chapter in my book about it. It's just surreal, it's burnt into my brain.
I can't. I mean, it's the biggest trauma of our life, and you were right there on it.
I took the train in from Massapequa to Long Island Railroad, Massapequa line to Penn Station. Penn Station. I took the I don't remember which subway line, but I took the subway line down to all the way down to that area, and it stopped about a mile short. 3/4 of a mile short. You couldn't go any further. They weren't letting anybody in. When I got out, I showed the officer my paperwork where I used to work. I'm going into the academy. They let me down to help. But just walking down there, it was just like, New York is New York. There's only one New York. Hustle and bustle, people everywhere. After COVID, things were a little different, but that's a different story.
Exactly. Yeah.
Pre-COVID, pre-9/11, it was like 24/7. It was chaos.
Busiest place in the world,
When you were walking down to the World Trade, it was empty. It was like a ghost town. Dust everywhere, just pitch black. I don't get scared by much, but it was depressing, like an eerie feeling,
Yeah, almost like a post-apocalyptic concept.
Exactly. Like a nuclear bomb hit, like a bomb. It was nuts.
Yeah, I can't imagine. No, and that's a lot of people got into first responders after 9/11, and because I work with a lot of people, and I hear that they joined in that 2001 2002 area, time frame, and it was a big thing to motivate to go, at least as civilians, to go and help because who knows if we're going to be under some sort of attack again in the years to come or what have you, and it sounds like they're not dealing with military, they're going civilian. So a lot of people wanted to help, and I can only imagine when it came to you going to the academy, and then of course your background in the with your master's degree and your bachelor's degree. When you got into law enforcement there in New York, did you automatically go into or work up very quickly to like a leadership role or any type of battalion or I'm not sure what the nomenclature is in your local municipality, but were you ever any type of leadership that way and lead people?
Yes. So when I was in the city, when I was in Baltimore City, I worked patrol. Obviously, I was in the academy, then I worked patrol, and then pretty quick after that, I started working plain clothes. I was rotating in and out of plain clothes. I did a couple of years there, and I wound up transferring out to the county. Kind of like people do out here, like they go from the city to Nassau or Suffolk or Port Authority or whatever. The benefits were better, the pay was better. I had a hard time leaving because I was young. I had that personality. I was aggressive. I loved being a Baltimore City police officer because that's a whole another animal. You literally see more in a week in Baltimore than the outside jurisdictions in Maryland see ever. It's all policing, but it's a different animal.
Right.
Meaning, you could go to a midnight shift, start at 10:39, roll call. By 11 o'clock, you're backed up 20, 30 calls. It was a madhouse. So I learned a lot there, and I wound up transferring out to Montgomery County, Maryland, which is a lot slower. Obviously, everything is compared to Baltimore. I retired, like I said, due to an injury sustained at work and some health issues. And my contract was really good, so it allowed me to keep working. I took kind of like an administrative supervisory position at a law enforcement agency in New York. I moved back home and I started working at the Seagate Police Department all the way at the end of Coney Island, the tip of Coney Island. It's called Seagate Police Department, and it's basically a private law enforcement agency. that's run by a board that's given. It's not many places like it in New York State.
I've never heard of anything like it.
Yeah, they're given full law enforcement authority. It's almost like a village police department, but
Okay.
they're run by a body, a board.
A board.
You know, there's a president and 12 or 16 board members, and they run everything. They appoint a chief of police, usually an ex-NYPD guy, ex-NYPD chief, and a lot of the guys that work there are retired police.
Gotcha.
And I was a sergeant there. I was a supervisor there. I was in charge of training. I was
awesome.
at New York State Department of Criminal Justice Services, what they call general topics instructor for recruits and police and peace officers, recruits and, in service and things of that nature. And I also helped out with the admin and patrol over there.
Gotcha. So when it comes, here on the Elevate podcast, it's all about the mental health and the resilience of our first responders, whether that's a police, corrections, fire, EMS, dispatch. Those are the four or five main categories that we talk about, and of course you fall in heavily into the peace officer side of things, real quick, don't forget to like, subscribe, share. If Tom is talking about something today and it clicks with you, if it clicks with something, you know someone that could be beneficial to hear this message, don't hesitate to share that with them. But when it comes to the fact of the mental health side of things, 9/11 was a big mental health trauma to all of us, even us from a distance. And you were there and you were in it. And I can't even imagine. I literally can't imagine the mental health struggles, let alone the physical and the cancer struggles that people have had over the years. Did you, when you, in your book is, the good, the bad, the good, the ugly, and the corrupt, what part of that journey that you had did mental health of yourself and your fellow officers actually be something that no one, because I can only imagine back then the tough New Yorkers, they want to push it down. They don't want to talk about things. They don't want to admit that they may have some weird shit going on in their heads. What role happened with you during your leadership role where people would come in and maybe need help, or what you would do or what that department would do? I always like to talk to different people from different departments and see what type of mental health they had. Most of them are none back then. And then what they have now, and what our listeners and our first responders that listen to this podcast, or the family members that listen to this podcast, can say, okay, listen, we want to do it like this department, and other departments are doing it better now. This is why we should.
Right. We could talk the rest of the show about this.
I know. Yeah.
It's a really, really interesting topic. So I'm going to speed talk right now, I guess.
Yeah, no problem.
Roll out.
Yeah.
Regurgitate. Regurgitate. So a couple things that come to my mind. One of the things that's really interesting, I was a certified New York State general topics and firearms instructor. I taught firearms. Very big, very important thing. There's got to be a lot of discipline with that. You can't have people getting hurt. You had, and this will tie in later, you had a guest, I forget his name, I think on your last podcast, that was talking about stigmas in law enforcement.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword. People need help.
Yeah.
Military, law enforcement, first responders, they need to be able to express themselves. They need to be able to get the stuff off their chest. And so much of the time they can't, because they're coming back and they're snatching your badge, they're snatching your gun, they're saying you're not fit for duty. They send you to the psychologist, but then they say, no, you're not fit for duty. So like your guy was saying last week, or whenever the interview took place, people are afraid to talk.
Yeah.
Because the minute they do, they're screwed. They're screwed.
Right.
I had a girl I worked with, and one thing about my book, I disclose a ton of good and a ton of bad. But one thing I don't do is I don't mention names. I don't do that. Of course
not. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you don't. That's probably.
I don't do that.
Probably a good rule. Yeah, for sure.
Not for legal reasons, because obviously, in order to jam someone up legally, civilly, you have to be telling a lie. First of all, research my book. You're not going to find discrepancies or lies. But 600 citations, whatever it is, I have in my book, witness statements, court cases, movies, newspaper articles. It's all legit, but I don't out people. That's not my point. I'm not looking to jam anyone up. I'm not looking
Right.
to get anybody in trouble. I'm telling a general story to paint a general picture, because I'm pro-police, but certain pro-police, pro-government, whatever. But certain things have to be fixed because there's too much BS going on. There's too much nepotism, politics, corruption. We need to fix things.
Yeah.
And the mental health issue needs to be fixed. A girl I worked with, it's in my book as well. Wonderful girl. I'm not going to mention her name. She responds to a call. There's a call of a shoplifter or something. I figured if it was a shoplifter or robbery. She responds. The guy left the store already. She confronts him on the street. She meets him on the street. He's running out. Obviously, this guy's thinking about suicide by police, death by cop. There's a standoff. He has a knife. She has a gun drawn. She has no choice. She tells him 5 or 6 times. I don't know. I don't know exactly how many times. I'm just thinking out loud. She tells him several times, drop the knife, drop the knife, drop the knife. The guy charges her. She has to shoot him.
Mm.
So I see her a couple months after, 6 months, a year after, and she's at headquarters. And I'm like, hey, how you been? How's everything? I haven't seen you in a while. I gave her a hug and a kiss. And she says, can't do the job anymore. It's not for me. I keep having flashbacks of this guy in my mind, gargling on his own blood.
Mm.
After I shot him. I can't do it anymore. And I looked at her and I said, listen, I get it. If you ever want to talk, anything, you want to go grab a bite, just call me. And that was probably 15, 16 years ago, 18 years ago. I never heard from her again. And I pray to God, I hope she's okay, but
Right.
these things affect people.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the reason we're never in a better time than we are right now to be able to try and, one, change leadership, two, because that's where it starts.
Right.
So if the leadership is not going to condemn you and they can perform a safe space for people to say, hey, listen, I just need to work through some things. Another thing that we have to do this, is we have to implement this kind of discussion and normalizing. I like to call it normalizing. I think that's probably the episode you saw was where he mentioned the word stigma. I'm not using the word stigma as much anymore. I'm trying to use the word normalize the discussion of mental health, because one thing that we're not robots yet. I say yet because holy crap, did you see what Elon Musk just released? So who knows? But we're not robots. We are humans, and humans have brains, and brains have a way of messing with ourselves, and sometimes it's not even consciously, it's subconscious. You have the nightmares. That's when you're asleep. You're not even realizing it. And next thing you know, you're waking up in a cold sweat, remembering, a bad incident. And that is a huge red flag for PTSD. The PTSD, everybody doesn't like to be labeled as PTSD because it's a disorder. So they are literally trying to change the name right now. And in our Congress, there are individuals that on a yearly basis, they're going in to try to change the name to a PTSI. So it's an injury. So an incident like your person went through, your female officer went through, that would be an injury. Just like if we got an injury or hurt on the job, and we can heal from that for the most part. There's some career-ending injuries. We get that in any line of duty and any job really. So it's one of those things where we really need to normalize this conversation. And we need to bring it into the educational and the academy side of things. That's where I think we're missing the boat, because if we can start there in 15 more years, or the first 5 years from now, if we were to have a national education, and a good one, where we talk about the brain, we talk about how our brain is something we can control, good, bad, and the ugly, and the tools that are out there now, more than ever, above and beyond talk therapy, because a lot of people don't want to do talk therapy, or they feel that they're going to lose their badge or lose their job or be labeled as not fit for duty. That all has to change. And it's a multi-level system. It's not just a light switch. And we've got to start somewhere, and podcasting about it and getting it out there and inviting people like yourself on to talk about things like this is really because somebody's going to be listening to this and they resonate with you. Or they resonate with me as a paramedic, and they go, you know what? These guys talked about how tough it was for them to actually get help. Maybe I should go get some help and figure out what that means. And the Elevate podcast offers all different types of help that's out there. And you can just look back at old episodes and see different ways that I bring people to the conversation, along with stories like Tom's here and how he, got through his issues. And we haven't even got into the sickness and the cancer part and not being fit for duty physically because of your health, let alone mental health, so your physical health with cancer. And that had to weigh on you too, because I know one time when I was injured and I couldn't work, I felt not worthy, and that made me go down a spiral. So talk a little bit about the time when you got diagnosed with your cancer and you maybe came to that realization that you couldn't do the job anymore and serve like you wanted to, like you had your whole life, and how you got through that.
So it's so much more than that. It's so much more encompassing, right? One of my outlets to this crazy world we live in is martial arts. I'm a lifelong martial artist. I started martial arts when I was 8. I really got into it when I stopped for a while when I was in my early years, and then I really got back into it around 17 or 18. And I never stopped since, even with layoffs due to my injuries, my health. I'm a American Combat Karate black belt and a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and I just love everything about it. Teaches you to deal with life. When you're on the floor, this is a whole other concept. Mental health, martial arts, they come together.
Blend. Yep.
They blend. When you're on the floor, either stand up fighting, sparring, or on the ground, on the mat in jiu-jitsu, you have that and only that to think of, because someone's going to choke you out. Someone's going to knock you out.
Yeah.
You have to focus on that, and it teaches you to stay focused on what's important. Martial arts are huge. And I used martial arts throughout my whole law enforcement career because that was an outlet for me. When I found out I had martial arts, when I found out I had cancer, my doctor called me and he's like, "You got to stop martial arts. You got to stop everything right now." I said, "What are you talking about? I'm going to martial arts right now." He said, "Tom, I don't think you understand. You have a tumor in your lymph node in your throat, and you have a big tumor enveloping your T5 vertebrae. My back was breaking." He's like, "You're not going anywhere."
Yourself. Yeah.
He's like, "You're going to be paralyzed and you could die." And I'm like, "What?" So I was literally walking out the door to go to jiu-jitsu. I'm like, "This is bullshit. Excuse my language. This is BS. I don't care about."
That's okay. This is PG-13.
Yeah.
We're good.
This is nonsense. I'm going to jiu-jitsu. And he knows my family, whatever. So they reached out and they're like, "Tom, you got to get to the hospital. Like, there's no jiu-jitsu." So that was really bad. Like, I couldn't teach. I suffered herniated discs at the police department when I was younger. And I retired due to that and some other things. So I don't go like I used to. When I was in my 20s, I used to compete. I used to go nuts. Now it's more of like a mentor teaching role, But I had to stop all that when I got sick. Literally, I wouldn't wish cancer treatment on my worst enemy. It was torture, spinal taps, bone punctures. Some people have, depending on the surgery, people have surgery. Depending on the type of cancer, some people have surgery, radiation, chemo, the side effects, the medication. It's horrific. Yeah, cancer was a bad time.
Well, I'm glad you're through it, man.
Thanks, man.
I lived with a mother that had cancer, bilateral breast and cervical cancer, and beat it in 5 years, and then
God bless.
And then 2 years later came down with encephalitis and passed away.
My God.
She killed cancer, and then she got sick in another way. So I lived through those years. I was in my early days of healthcare when she was going through all that, and it was tough. It's tough on everybody. It's tough on the patient. Right. It's tough on the family. It's tough on the friends. I mean, it's just a horrible thing to deal with. So I'm glad you're through it, and hopefully your family stayed intact through it, because that's another thing that they found through cancer stuff is families get divided and divide. So
yeah, my mom and dad, even at their age, they're amazing. They're the best. My cousin Lisa, she helped me through everything. I had other family members that helped me.
Your support system was there.
Exactly.
And that's important too. Like, okay, so there's a support system. This is like a perfect circle back. Right. The support system for a physical condition is huge. And then we go and we say, "Hey, listen, I've got an injury from an incident that happened to me in my brain, not even a traumatic brain, but a mental health injury, and where's the support system?
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't want it to be family. Sometimes it needs to be family. Sometimes you'd rather it not be family, but you definitely need to be your peers, and your peers should be able to be the ones that embrace you and help you up front. We just got done with a big lecture on in my department, and there's a list of people that we can call for mental health support, and a couple of people said, you know what, I wouldn't call anyone on that list. I'm like, okay, that's to each their own, whatever. But would you call that person or that guy or that gal in the room with us right now your partners? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, then there it is. I'm like, mental health doesn't have to be this labeled of who you have to call. The main thing is that you at least say something to someone that you're just not feeling right,
Exactly. Well, you know what helped me? I wouldn't say the most, but you know what helped me a lot too? I have a group of, 10 or 12 high school college friends. We have this group text. We destroy each other every day. We joke.
Oh my gosh, those get so side. Oh my gosh,
it never stops. It
never
insanity.
stops.
Like,
I'm in the same boat. I've got friends.
If people read that, we'd all be.
Oh my gosh,
we'd all be in the same.
Yeah. That we would be, absolutely, because I got the same group of friends, and it's just like like it'll go like maybe 2 or 3 weeks with nobody saying anything, and then all of a sudden it lights up for 2 days, and we just like we rip that's that's the camaraderie of best buds, So let's talk about your book now, and let's talk about what was the inspiration to write it. The name of it, of course, we'll put it in the link where people can get it. I'll make sure that that's in the link.
Thank you.
And whatnot. And then, of course, when it comes to what was the inspiration of writing it, and then fast forward to just my entrepreneurial brain of doing stuff, is like, what are your plans now that you've written a book? Are you looking for like lecture circuits or speaking circuits or book tours? So start off first by the inspiration and a little bit more about the book, and then go into the other part.
I was sitting at home one day, and I have a really good memory for certain things. Like, my brain works. Everybody has a different intelligence level. My brain works that way. Like, my memory is awesome. And I remember basically. Yeah.
I don't remember what I did yesterday. No.
Listen, a lot of people that they don't, but
yeah,
my brain works differently that way. Like, I remember, you could say something like, "Oh, do you remember in 1990 on this day?" I remember things, especially in the police department. And I said, so many people, the overwhelming majority, don't really understand what law enforcement's about. They don't understand what it's like to put on a badge. They don't get it. And not in a bad way. They've never lived that life.
They can't. I mean, I don't know what it's like, and I'm a first responder. I don't know what it's like to be you, and you've seen some of the stuff I've done when you've been on scene and stuff. Right. But on the other hand, you don't know what happens in the back of the truck and all the stuff we go through.
Exactly.
I mean, it makes sense,
So, for whatever reason, law enforcement is always a hot button topic. It's always a big issue. People love it. They love to learn about it. They love to hear about it, either the good or the bad, And I was just sitting at home one night, and I remember I was telling somebody I was with, I said, I want to write a book. I just feel like writing a memoir of what I've been through and things I've seen and my partners had gone through. And I didn't really know where it was going to go at first. And I had no idea how to write a book. I had no idea of book laws and plagiarism and the umbrella of defamation and use of likeness. I had no idea what I was doing, how to set up a blog, who to go to. So one day at a time, I started researching. I learned everything myself. And I just started writing notes. Out of nowhere, I grabbed my iPad. I just started writing notes. Remember this one time in Baltimore, this happened. And then before you know it, I have 500 pages of craziness. And that's honest to God how it happened. That's exactly awesome. How it happened. And now people read it and they're like they're shocked, what really goes on. People have an idea of what goes on in this world, but they don't know details, obviously. So there's not going to be much in here that people are going to be like, wow, like, I've never heard anything remotely like that. But most of these stories in my book, specifically, they're not going to know. Right. So when they read it, it's shocking to people. I'm sure it's going to be shocking to a lot of people that don't understand that world.
Right. So when it comes to what you want to do with with the book, and you said it's just been released recently, so that's great that the timing is perfect that we can promote it on the podcast and get people to look it up. Is it in audio format or just paperback and whatnot?
So I had paperback. I'm doing digital now. as we
Okay.
speak. I just started looking into audio. I think I might do an audio book as well.
If you only knew a voiceover actor who.
Do you do those too? Do you do those?
Oh yeah, that's how I got started in podcasting is voiceover.
Really?
Yeah,
Nice, man.
I just finished a book for a guy. Come to find out, the guy lived 15 miles away from me. I was hired through a third party, and I looked up the author, and I'm like, crap, he lives in Columbus, Ohio. And I got to know him. We did all the revisions together over the phone. It was I feel because I read it was his life history.
Right.
It was
Right.
what I read, and I feel so close to him because I read his book, and you read a book, you record a book, you listen to it to edit it, and then you revise it. So it's like 4 times reading his book. So I know him. I'm like, I feel like I know you, Chuck.
Right.
So and that's the thing. That's one cool thing. I would highly recommend. About 3/4 of the way through, he was like, "Man, Kyle, I just realized I probably should have been the one reading this book." And I'm like, I don't deny that. I'm like you got a great voice. All we'd have to do is set you up in the room properly with some good microphones and a good, dampening to make it sound good. And you definitely could, So I always encourage authors to read their own book because they just bring a little bit more authenticity to it. But when it comes to how to do that, that's something that I can help you with. And microphones and places like your walk-in closet. That's where I started. You'd be surprised how good of a recording you can get inside of a walk-in closet, honestly. So I did it for a year. I did all of my voiceover work in a year in a walk-in closet.
Well, that's stuff we're gonna have to talk to after this.
Yeah. So yeah, this is
100%.
great. So please, everybody, go take a look. If Tom's book sounds interesting or intriguing to you, we'll put it in the show notes. And so you can go and take a look at it. And he mentioned digital version. I know that I'm a big digital Kindle guy as well as audio guy. So that's one thing I always like to make sure people, if they do have a book and I get to know them, be like, hey, I'm not saying you need to have me read it because it takes a lot of time and whatnot, and you have to fit it in and time frames and whatnot. But an audio version just helps a ton of people. So Are you looking to promote this book, or is it just was that a passion project of yours, or now are you looking to expand on that and maybe go around on like the talk circuit? So tell me what you want to do after this. When I'm not sure what you're doing now, you're no longer in law enforcement, you train and stuff like that. I'm like, what's your aspirations from moving forward to help our fellow officers and first responders?
So literally, I wrote this book for myself. It was a cathartic type of thing, self-clarity. I got a lot out of it. That's why I started it, for myself, to tell my story. But a lot of people have been reaching out because it's different in the sense, like I said, not a lot of people understand how government policing really works. There's a lot of good and there's a ton of bad. Certain people want to paint a certain picture that, everything is on the up and up. It's not. And there's great cops, great politicians, and there's horrible ones. Horrible. So I would love to be able to. I'm so busy with law school that I'm trying to figure all this out as I go along, and I have no time with all this. Like I'm always studying, but I'm networking, and I meet a lot of people that understand marketing, I'm getting contacted by media sources and some people about this book because it's starting to catch on. I think I would like to get out there, and I would like to help people. Certain groups, if there's law enforcement groups, first responder groups. There's a group that I actually help with. You should take a look sometime. It's called Project 9 Line. They do everything for veterans.
Okay.
They do all kind of, and I'm pitching their.
Are those the apparel guys?
I think they might have some apparel, but it's a non-for-profit. They just help.
Okay. All right.
They help.
I think there's an apparel company called 9 Line Apparel.
Okay.
And they've got the helicopter with people shooting down the ropes is their logo. Could be the same thing, and they most likely have a nonprofit.
Yeah, they have a nonprofit. And what they do is they help, all different kind of things they do with the veterans. And one of the things they do, and now it's kind of moving to first responders as well. One of the things that they do is they teach, because one of the people that opened it, he's a really good guy. I'm not going to put his name out, but he's a lawyer and he's retired military.
Okay.
But he's a jiu-jitsu guy too.
Oh,
So they give free jiu-jitsu classes, and I love it. I've been down there a couple of times because I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu, so I volunteer my time. I love helping these people.
Nice.
And just seeing them happy and learning jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu can be expensive. Let's
Oh,
be honest.
really?
Jiu-jitsu
Okay.
can be very expensive monthly, and to be able to give back to them for free after all the things they do for the country,
Right.
it's a good feeling.
And and just the last thing we talk about here, just because we've mentioned it a couple times, and because it's actually a topic that has come up this week with me and my division, is jiu-jitsu and that martial arts. And I wasn't aware that locally here in Central Ohio, we have several firefighters and that are instructors. My partner, my EMS partner, he's recently got into jiu-jitsu from having his daughter be in it. He's got a 7-year-old daughter, and she's in it, and that spun into him being interested in it. And now he comes to tell me, he's like, "Hey, Kyle, I never thought I'd say this, but or ask about this, but I think I've got a passion project now, and it's helping people learn jiu-jitsu and how it can help us as first responders. I'd love to talk to you sometime, about what you've done for your, same concept with what I'm doing with my podcast. I physically don't want to try jiu-jitsu because I've got 2 bad shoulders, 3 bad knees. When I say 3 bad knees,
Yeah,
I've had I've had 3 knee surgeries, and I've had an Achilles tendon rupture. I'm like, man, I don't need to put myself into any more danger. I can't even raise both hands in the air with my shoulders the way they are. Not that I wouldn't want to do it, but I've got my passion project with this podcast. But it was just funny. So now that I had that conversation with him only 3 or 4 days ago, and now I'm having the conversation with you, I think we're onto something here. I think people listening to this podcast that don't know, that are looking for an avenue or a place to have that mental clarity, to have some outlet. I think jiu-jitsu or any type of martial arts. My one friend did boxing too, but he's like, that's a little more violent, and it deals with actual concussion possibilities, so more injuries. Don't get me wrong, you could probably get injured in jiu-jitsu too, but it's one of those things where seems like a little bit more lower impact, maybe.
Well, here's the thing: if you ever want, you can have me back, and we could do a whole martial art interview.
Right.
Real quick, boxing's amazing. I love boxing. I love stand-up. It is brutal. The blows to the head, concussions, it's brutal. But jiu-jitsu is just as deadly, just as dangerous if you're not safe. A guy like you comes in. There's schools that are just straight for competition. They're wrecking each other. They're wrecking each other in there. Just balls to the wall, smashing each other. I'm a 245-pound, almost 6'3" jiu-jitsu black belt. A guy like you comes into my school. I have injuries myself. I have health issues. I'm not looking to smash you. That's not what jiu-jitsu is about.
Gotcha.
Jiu-jitsu is not about that.
It's about up here.
Right. If it's a good jiu-jitsu school, a good jiu-jitsu guy, good person, you come to my school, you tell me, listen, this is what I'm looking to do. I want to be a competitor. Okay, well, then here's the guys that want to compete. I want to be someone that just comes in to stay in shape. I have health issues. I'm not looking to get hurt. Then we're going to go nice and easy. Martial arts is like life. You don't want to hurt anybody, especially if they're a good person. So if you come into a jiu-jitsu school and you say, I have this XYZ, okay, brother, we're going slow. Let me show you some of these moves. The competition guys, go ahead. Go in the corner, kill each other. Not literally,
I know what you mean.
But go, do it. So jiu-jitsu is for everybody. Keep that in mind. Martial arts can be for everybody.
That's
You just got to find the right instructor, the right training partners, and the right mentality.
Gotcha. Fantastic. All right. Well, Tom, thank you so much for coming on the Elevate podcast. I want to just make sure that everybody likes, shares, and subscribes. We will have a sponsor. I'm in the middle of negotiating with a new sponsor with a program that I just went through. The sponsor, I reached out to him the other day, and he's given me the green light. We're just working on sponsorship copy right now. So this may be a spot where I say, and now a word from our sponsors.
Nice.
And I just wait for a second, now I'll put it in. Or I may just not do it on this show or what have you. But I'm excited for that. It is a system that helps with anxiety, procrastination, when it comes to, people pleasing, self-worth. It's a program that I didn't understand the concept until I actually went through it. The gentleman offered me a seat in the program, and it's changed everything for me. And I cannot wait to be able to share with everybody what it is and where they can look into it and whatnot. But I'm excited about that. I'm excited about your book. I'm going to be buying your book here shortly as soon as I get the link from you. I always like to I want to have a bookshelf behind me eventually actually. I'm building a studio right behind that wall. Right.
Nice.
Where's it at? That wall right there is a new studio that I'm in about halfway through with. So I'll eventually be a whole new podcasting studio for both my podcasts and all my classes that I do for online classes. And I can't wait to be able to do that. And I want to have a bookshelf with everybody that I've had on that's written a book. I want to have their books on my shelf. Yeah, so yours will be on there for sure. I'll put the show notes in the show notes. I'll put the link to Thomas's book, and so people can grab it when they feel like they need to or want to hear more about his stories. It's very intriguing. Of course, being a paramedic, sometimes I want to know about your guys' world. And I'm sure sometimes, inevitably, if I, on scene with a police officer and we've got some downtime, sometimes it'll be like, hey, what's the worst thing you've ever seen? Well, not as much because they see bad stuff too, but you're always like, oh, I hate that question. But you still secretly want to know what the other, because a lot of us first responders may have looked into law enforcement, may have looked into fire, may have looked into other things, but then, decided on a different path, and always want to know a little bit about how the other side. So any last words, Thomas, that you want to talk to us about? Or Tom, sorry, I don't mean to formalize you, but
No worries. I want to emphasize, thank you. It was awesome. I think you'd be a good jiu-jitsu hobbyist. So reach out to me off this podcast, and we'll make it happen.
All right, yeah. I don't know how can we do a virtual jiu-jitsu in our brain? No.
Anything you want, man. Anything you want.
My son did it for a little bit back when he was younger. He was like 7th or 8th grade, and he had a friend of his whose mom and dad were jiu-jitsu.
Nice.
I'm not sure what are the instructors called. They're not senseis.
Professor. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they both ran a jiu-jitsu school, and my son was interested in it and went and learned some stuff, and I was able to watch, and it just seems very it's not that, at least what we saw, at least in the beginning stages, it's just like you described. It's not that fast battle. It's right. It's that slower, how do I get out of this move? And I'm sure and just to kind of flash back to my conversation with my partner, he mentioned that one of the people that is in his jiu-jitsu school is a firefighter at a local fire department, and they're now going and bringing it into the fire department as a volunteer thing and a free service, as well as going to the police officers in their local community. And I guess the police officers are loving it, because if they're on the ground in a grapple, there's no better ideas to know than what you learn in jiu-jitsu.
Exactly.
So fantastic. All right, Tom, thank you so much for coming on the Elevate podcast. I appreciate your time and all your information and all your knowledge, man. I appreciate it, and hope we get to talk more often.
My man, thank you, sir.
All right, take care.
Thank you for listening to Ignition Path, fueling the entrepreneurial fire.